So what is noise, you ask? Well, to explain it simply, it is when the sensor doesn't get enough light. It creates small patterns in your image, which look a lot like how grain used to look on the older film cameras. And now on digital, the higher you crank up your ISO, the more obvious noise becomes. So let's take some examples here where I'm going to force the camera to have higher ISO, just so you can see this. So I'm gradually going to go up from the bottom, higher and higher and higher. Now I know it sounds really obvious to say this, but remember, just because you're cranking up the ISO, it doesn't mean you're actually adding more light. You're just making the sensor more sensitive to the light that is there. And when the sensor just doesn't have enough light, that's when you're really going to start to see noise. And it can be really obvious on video footage. Do you see the problem? Do you see that the higher the ISO, the more the noise is evident? The good news is that software can already deal with a bunch of the noise issues you can have, and digital sensors are getting better and better at handling noise. And within a few years, this will probably no longer be a problem at all. I shot with the Sony a7S II in the desert, lit only by moonlight, and it was actually pretty spectacular. So you get that higher ISO means more possibility of noise, right? Don't worry about this for now. I just want you to remember a general rule of thumb, which is that you want to use the lowest ISO possible when taking your shots. Daylight shots like this are easy. You just keep your camera at ISO 100 or ISO 50 if you have a camera that can do that. And also realize every camera sensor is going to have what it's called its native ISO, meaning what the ideal ISO rating is for that sensor with no electronic modification being used to brighten or darken it, which theoretically means less noise. But at the beginning stage of the game, this isn't really important. Just know that in the future, you can research out what the lowest ideal ISO is for your specific camera and shoot with that. For now, daylight, ISO 100, you're going to be pretty good. All right, so by now you should understand that ISO controls how sensitive your camera sensor is to light. And you should also understand that you don't want to get noise in your image, so you want to use the lowest ISO possible. So what I want you to do now is I want you to practice with this. Go ahead and put your camera onto the auto setting of your camera and take a look at your flowers or whatever it is that you're photographing. Go ahead, get them in focus, and get a photo of it. Now, assuming your camera's working right, you should have a nicely exposed image. Should be pretty good. Maybe not perfect, but your auto setting, I'm assuming, is doing a pretty good job. So then what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and move your camera over onto the manual setting. Now, in most cases, it should keep the settings that your camera had on automatic over to manual. And then I want you to go ahead, focus your shot, take it. You should be at ISO 100 if you're in a bright daylight setting. If you're not, go ahead and go into your ISO controls, start at 100, take a photo. Then I want you to go ahead and bump your camera up to 200. Take another photo. Go ahead and bump it up again, up to 400. Bump it up again, up to 800. Bump it up again to 1600. Bump it up again to 3200. So just practice with the ISO going up and down until you really get a feel for how increasing ISO makes the image brighter and decreasing it makes it darker. And then when you've got that, let's go ahead and jump into the next video where we talk about the next tool for controlling your exposure, shutter speed.